Hello, everybody. It's Dina Mitchell at the Realize Foundation, and I'm here today with another author. And I want to introduce Brad to you all, and we're going to hear a little bit from him about his chapter and his experience. And I just want to say our second Scars to Stars book, Volume 2, is coming out September 22nd. We're going to have a virtual launch event that day, and you can register at therealizefoundation.org at the bottom of this video under the events tab, and everybody can register for free. You can also make a donation when you register to help us keep putting on events. So welcome, Brad.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to come on tonight.
Yeah, I'm so excited that you've been part of this chapter or this book, and I think your chapter is gonna resonate and help a lot of people. So
Well, I hope so. It definitely is my goal, especially with the topic that was chosen. This is the second book that has gone out in regards to having a chapter on it, and there's a third one coming out in Australia. So it's one of those that you see different things from different perspectives over time, and I think time is one of those things that end up helping you to be able to prepare for sitting down with other people that have had similar instances. They don't know what to say, how to approach it, how they deal with prevention, let alone postvention. It is a very difficult thing, whether it's family, whether it's friends, colleagues, especially. Employers have a very difficult time, I think, in navigating such a life events, especially work teammates, especially if they've been working very, very closely with somebody and they have a loss, as a result of suicide. They don't always necessarily know how to approach somebody in that space. The best thing that I can always say is, don't exclude them. Don't change how you've been in the past. They may be a little bit more emotional. They may just need some space. My recommendation is always just to make sure that you let them know a couple of different things. One, things to say. Things to say is, I'm so sorry for your loss. What can I do to help you today? Checking in with them. Just, just knowing that, if they've gone out for bereavement, if you've been used to calling them and contacting them during times when they have been in that, been going out and doing things, don't stop doing that. I know for me, it was one of those things that nobody did that. Nobody stopped showing up. I did see certain things in certain circles because I didn't process things well. And especially in the place that I expected it the least, I found it the most. And that's a place that's at a house of worship that I was attending. I think that's still something within a lot of house of worship. So wherever you go to, if they have a difficult time in dealing with that, especially from the perspective of, from a biblical standpoint or from any other standpoint, and how that they view that as being detrimental to somebody, and how that they process that. I found that was something that was really difficult for me to understand, looking back at it in hindsight. And some of the comments that you get, some well-intentioned, others not, but I did see that people pulled away. And, that was a challenge, especially when I was, it was really, there's a point when you're really struggling with who you are, what you are. You wall yourself off, and at least I did. I can't speak for everybody, but it's just one of those things where I was just having some of those people that I thought I was really close with, just to be able to say, hey, listen, I know you're struggling. Come on, let's just go out. I want to grab a cup of coffee with you. Tell me where you're at. What are things going on? That's when you really truly understand who is what Brene Brown talks about is your true marble jar friends. Those people that have demonstrated their abilities and your confidence in them, and vice versa, where you share your everything with them. You're able to be vulnerable, not really have to worry about the soft underbelly being attacked.
Mhm.
There's no judgment, there's no fear, there's no shame, there's no guilt, there's none of that. Whereas I didn't necessarily find that to be true. Uh, there's things that I would say that those are things to be wary of. Using terms like, "Well, that was really selfish," you know, "Didn't you see it coming?" All these other type of things that people really don't realize, and how detrimental some of those things can be, and so hurtful it can be. Um, I know for me, I didn't have a lot of that. I had a couple of things that were brought up. One was somebody that had accused me of, I used as an excuse, and not attending my house of worship that I went to. When, for me, there was just days, and
Mhm.
I just felt so overwhelmed with everything, the shame, the guilt,
Mhm.
especially for someone like me who'd been in the military for 15 years. I didn't know what I was processing. It wasn't until, November of 2020 that I was diagnosed with PTSD, and my therapist said it was a direct result of the accumulation of trauma over two previous attempted suicides, until the final time when my daughter did take her life on May 28th of 2018. So everybody deals with things a little bit differently. It's just whether or not you're able to put together some level of empathy with somebody and say, what, I've never experienced exactly what you've dealt with, but I've
Mhm.
had such a detrimental loss in my life that I can sit with you and I can say, or not say, it's like going, "Hey, I'm here for you today. How can I show up for you? Do you need me just to sit here with you? What do you want to do? Do you want to talk? Do you want us to go have a cup of coffee and you tell me what you need for today?" And sometimes I just needed somebody just to get me out of where I was at that particular day, maybe throw a fishing pole in my hand, which is one of my favorite things to go ahead and do. And that's when I would just feel really at ease enough to where I say, I would be ready to go ahead and talk, and just to be able just to be ready. But I never had that occur. So
Mhm.
those are just steps. Now, as far as for in an employer-employee environment, here's what I would recommend. If you've had a high-performing employee, for example, if they're whatever level that, if they're on the leadership team, if they're a middle manager, or if they're, it doesn't matter who that they are, they've been a vital part of your organization. It could be just somebody that's just in the hourly ranks that, you know, stuffing boxes. They're a human being. It's the ability to go back in and talk to them and saying, I just want to let you know I'm here for you today. It may just be one of those things where you just go, "I'm so sorry for your loss," and sometimes it's just buying them a cup of coffee and just letting them know that you're available to them at any time. And just, you can come into my office and just sit down for a few minutes if you need, just to kind of gather yourself. It's a safe place for you to go, or even to be able to talk to employees about, different times of the year, for susceptible people. Next month is going to be National Suicide Prevention Month, which is a big thing for me. I look at those opportunities to be able to talk to different employers on, how do you talk to your employees? How do you prepare them? Do you talk about mental health? How do you talk to them about mental health? Have you had anybody that has had a loss? If you haven't, how do you talk about different stages? We do really good on a number of different other events and different months, but yet mental health and suicide prevention get very, very little play.
Mhm.
We look at those opportunities, and they're missed opportunities for people to be able to come together and to be able to learn. You look at the things that are ended up happening within a very dynamic stratum. The suicide rate within the United States is climbing. It's gone up by 30% since 2018.
Yeah.
Uh, I took a look at, I'm a stats guy, I've been in quality for, over 10 years in manufacturing. So you take a look at trends over time. So when
Mhm.
you go through this and you start looking at it, I just hit people at dollars and cents. At the end of 2018, 2020 timeframe, it cost roughly $1.79 billion as a result of suicides in the United States. Now you take a look at that and how many people that goes towards. That's about $1.24 million per person that has taken their life. So it not only costs the family, but it also costs in a lot of other different ways. Now, I can't boil somebody's life down to dollars and cents, but there's going to be employers out there and say, okay, tell me how this fiscally impacts me. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about that. Let's say that you're the CEO of a company and you are the linchpin for your entire organization. And let's say that you employ somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 people. 250 families that are depending upon you to make good decisions and be there. What happens if you're afflicted with a mental health issue that results in you taking your life? Not only are you affecting your family's life, but you're also affecting your business life, especially if you're the one that's a linchpin. So when we talk about dollars and cents and how that affects people, if they want to go ahead and go in dollars and cents, I'm ready to go toe to toe with people. But the fact of the matter is, it's the emotional issues that really that people have a difficult time in really navigating.
Yes.
There's that component, especially for parents of kids that have taken their life. And by the way, the age groups keep getting younger and younger. We can probably relate that back to cyberbullying and those type of things, which are things that I never had to deal with as a teenager. There was just a normal type of stuff, and let's face it, some of the things that I went through as a teenager were pretty bad in by itself. I can't even imagine what that looks like today, because there's constant amount of bullying at school, online, and there's those complications that they have to deal with that. You take a look at the age group, so now you're seeing kids as young as 10 years old taking their life. For me, as this goes, what's going on here? The United States and the Congress itself is failing. I see that on a universal level. I can give you a great example. This is not bashing the Navy. I served for 15 years in that as a chief, but I had read an article where the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy was talking to a group of young sailors aboard ship. And one of the things that they were talking about was how a lot of the retrofits that were going on and the upgrades was really causing them an awful lot of stress and anxiety, because everybody knows if you can't get a good amount of sleep, and some of the other things that goes along with that, being deployed, some of the other things that have to go on with that, it becomes extremely challenging. And when you have somebody that's saying, hey, listen, I have a mental health issue that's being exacerbated by this, and we miss that opportunity to say, what's going on? We have a potential for where we start seeing a higher degree of incident rates of suicide. Right now, there is somewhere between the suicide rate within the military is going up. I think a lot of people have heard that the 22 a day in regards to veterans. It's somewhere between 22 to 28.
Yeah.
So it just varies. It depends upon, the time of year and how that ends up going towards. But when we miss that opportunity to have some of those hard conversations, they're uncomfortable. We don't want to have them. But at the same time, if we don't take the time to sit down and say, okay, take a breath and just say, okay, you know what, I'm going to lean into my discomfort. I'm going to say, tell me more. What's going on? What are you feeling? What are the things that are challenging you right now? We need to take that step to really listen. Then we start also at the same time is listening for things that are not being said. If we've had somebody that has been really engaging over a long period of time and all of a sudden they go quiet, what's going on? You want to be able to reach out to them and so they feel comfortable in being able to share and not feeling that their vulnerability is going to be a liability. If we don't take that opportunity to sit down with them, we could potentially have another statistic. Same thing with our kids. There were things that I totally didn't see within regards to my daughter. I started seeing behaviors over a long period of time, but there was never any diagnosis because of the way that the mental health industry is at. There's just not a lot of safeguards that are out there. I don't know what can be done. I just know that the more times that we can end up bringing up mental health and eliminating the stigma of it and talking openly about suicide prevention, and then at the same time is to be able to talk about postvention. What happens when, like I talked about, what happens when people come back and how do you end up working alongside with them, being open? There's two sides that we can end up dealing with that. One is in our educational institutions, having speakers to come in that have been people like me, to be able to share what happened, how they felt, and to be able to connect with the audience members and really tailor it to that environment. Um, I've been in a couple of companies where that's actually occurred, where somebody that had been part of the team had taken their life. So how sometimes that could be a missed opportunity to utilize that as an opportunity to open up a larger discussion, or train the staff into be able to sit with people, the emotional quotient, the EQ component of it. How do we deal with the emotional intelligence? um, it's not just the soft side of business, it's the people side of the business. It's not the dollars and cents. People would say that potentially, like I said before, how does it affect my bottom line? Well, the bottom line is how we end up looking at who our most valuable resources are. And really, that comes into the people within our organization.
I agree. I agree completely. And Brad is a wealth of knowledge in this arena. So anybody who wants to talk more about this, please reach out to him.
Yes, please.
But I would like to ask you a
Sure.
couple questions about the book and our
Absolutely.
project that we're working on. So the first question is, if you can tell us just in a couple or 2 or 3 sentences about what is your chapter about, so people will know that and they'll look to read your chapter.
I'd be happy to. Well, a couple of sentences. I think I teed it up pretty well with what I just led into. It really is the story of my daughter's life, and then through the stages of up to and including her death, and how I got to the point of celebration and be able to celebrate her life and what it means to me and how it can affect and impact others.
Yes. And it's so important to get your perspective because a lot of the conversations we have in our organization is about preventing suicide, but
Mhm.
there's this whole other side. When I first started doing research, I joined some Facebook groups, and some were that were struggling with ideation, and some groups were people that were struggling with loss. And so I've done a lot of research on both sides, but I've not been in your shoes. And
Mhm.
so I'm really thankful that you were willing to share that story in one of our books, because I think people do need to see the other side. And
Mhm.
and myself as a suicide survivor, it also makes me think about things differently, because I think when you're in that place where you just want the pain to stop, you
Mhm.
don't think about how it's going to affect everyone else in your life. And
Yeah.
it we have to have both perspectives, and we you're right, we have to have these conversations so people will know how to support someone in either instance, because I think people shut down because they just don't want to say the wrong thing. So the
Mhm.
more we can have the conversations, the more people can feel equipped to be supportive and have the conversation.
Right.
Um, and to your point about the system, you know, it was 1997. I woke up in the hospital after my attempt, and they gave me a note of a doctor to make an appointment with, and they let me walk out of the hospital.
Mhm.
And you know, the doctor that I saw, all he was interested in doing was giving me medication.
Yeah.
He didn't even recommend that I see a therapist. Like, it was,
Yeah.
when I look back on it now, I'm just like pretty appalled at how that was handled.
Yeah.
And I think we're getting better, but we have a long way to go.
Yeah, and I think that there is, there's two sides to for that as well. My
Mhm.
daughter experienced the same type of thing. Uh,
Mhm.
she didn't admit to me that she had attempted suicide, but later on with a psychologist, she did. Um, she had, been drinking, had, you know, there was a number of other different things. The California High Patrol, really, she was in the custody of the state, but essentially she was, at the ICU, couldn't do anything. But because of the amount
Mhm.
of blood that they had to give her, they couldn't get a valid, alcohol level. So what ended up happening was it was failed. She could have been locked up, could have, had observation. Second
Mhm.
time she went to an institution, ended up getting injured at the institution where it was not really clear how it occurred, but she had to go to surgery for her neck. And, obviously the third time she was just bound and determined. There was other pointers that was going towards that, but I think that, like you said, it doesn't always happen. Like I said, there's therapists and there's really good ones that are out there. I'm kind of the mindset, not just because I am a coach, it's just because of the fact I think you need both. You need somebody that has a good therapist along with the coach at some point, really to be able to get you past, some of, you talk about the trauma and keep reliving it, but giving you skills and to be able to understand the healing component of it. That's where I think from my perspective and what it did for me,
Mhm.
as far that was the most healing. The letters of forgiveness, the release of the trauma that I ended up having didn't really occur until after I had started working with two really incredible life coaches. And that really helped transform my mindset and my heart set. So with that, I had my heart and mind back together as one, uh, which is one of the reasons that I directed my energies more towards that. And I'm hoping that more um, corporate clients would start embracing that same mindset, because
Mhm.
quite frankly, we can't afford to lose more people, especially when they're so vital to what we do.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I feel like we could talk about this for a week.
Yeah, definitely.
But the other thing I want to ask you to share is about your experience. Whether it's being part of the project or writing the chapter, whatever you want to talk about
Sure.
in your experience of being part of this book.
Yeah, it's amazing to be able to talk about from scars to stars, because my chapter was on scars of the heart. Obviously, over time we have that open wound and it starts to close, and there's still a portion that's tender for us. But my goal as a writer and as an author is always to place the reader in the middle, and not just as they can be a casual observer, but you know, if you're an observer into an environment and you're placed right in the middle, it gives you a different perspective other than just looking at something from arm's length. And I think that's what's really crucial about the stories that I would see from this particular venture. When you have that level of intimacy within something, you can you can be overcome in some respects and put something down and say, hey, that didn't affect me. I didn't change. Mine's
Mhm.
always about leaving a lasting memory for someone to say, you know what, I'm taking something away from that I can use in my day-to-day life. Whereas, hey, that's something I didn't realize before. And it was impactful. And that's really I believe what the goal is always going to be within these type of books. And I think that they need to be.
Yeah, I think it's just the people that are willing to be so vulnerable and honest about things that they've been through, and our books have all kinds of stories, from suicide to addiction to abuse to
Hmm.
all kinds of things. And I think that my goal is that we meet people in those places and let them know they're not alone, hopefully before they even get to the stage of ideation,
Yeah.
and we can get them support. And that's also what our events are about. We're going to have one in October where we
Hmm.
do some exercises together and we get in breakouts and we get to actually connect with people, and it's really amazing what comes out of that. um but I think you're right. I think, for me, I was silent for 23 years about what I went through. I didn't tell anybody. I never even talked about it
Right.
until I lost a friend, and then I felt like I could have helped him, and that made me speak up.
Yeah.
And so, but all that time that I was holding that information inside, it it was very hard to. even think about talking about it because of the stigma, because of the thing, people didn't want to talk about it. And so I never had an opportunity where I met somebody that was willing to talk about this subject. And
Mhm.
so I just never did. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about the conversation piece and this, books, because if somebody is in that place and they're not ready to talk, they could read a chapter and
Yes.
they could also connect with that person and say, "Hey, I went through something similar. Would you talk to me about this?" And
Mm,
all of the people in the books are willing to do that. And so I think it's that way to find help without having to speak up and ask, if you will.
right. Right. And I think that's one of the reasons that I ended up doing that. The other book that I have that's out is a PDF book. It's called "From My Heart to Yours: I'm Not My Mistakes," which really goes through um, a lot of similar types of things. From attachment issues to first traumas to adolescent issues to divorce to the suicide, and then really coming out of the other end, but also putting people in the place of being able to ask questions of yourself, or and at the same time, I also put in actual letters of forgiveness that I ended up putting in for myself, for the people that I had issues with, and also had questions in there for people to participate with in order to go ahead and help themselves. Because, like
Mhm.
you said, sometimes people are not ready, but they can be ready by just preparing themselves.
Yeah, they can be ready. I think that's what's been so fascinating to me the past couple years with learning about more about the coaching world and all of these videos and digital courses and stuff that you can do on your own, almost like going to school for something, but
Hmm.
it's something you can do privately and at your own pace and all of that. And that's what's coming next for us. And the foundation is some courses, and one of them will be a scar course, which is like the first steps of healing and overcoming. And then the
Mm,
other one is going to be a star course, and that's going to be for people that are going to tell their story in one of our books. And we're going to have it just
mm,
structured a little differently than we've had it this time, because we want to build that community. We want people to be meeting regularly as a group so they can build that support for themselves and help others. And so those are coming in 2023. Um, and in the meantime, we're going to do another virtual event and hopefully do those more like either twice a year or quarterly or something like that. So people have that outlet as well. And then we have the private Facebook group that people are in and can connect with other people there as well. But do you have any last words for our audience?
I would just encourage people just to, when you're looking at these chapters, look at them with an open mind and an open heart, and not from what you can necessarily get from it, but what you can learn from it to share with others.
Mhm. Thank you. And I was having a conversation the other day with somebody when we were saying that sometimes you'll read a chapter that you don't relate to, or maybe you don't have anything in common with that person,
Hmm.
but it also might prepare you for something in the future that
Right.
that you haven't experienced yet. So I've learned something from everybody that has written in both books, and taken away lots of different, either it's coping mechanisms or
Hmm.
self-care ideas or whatever it is. So hopefully it is helpful. So for anybody watching, again, you can join us for the book launch on September 22nd. It'll be in the afternoon, 1 p.m. Mountain Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll have some fun. We'll learn about all the authors, and we'll have a couple breakout activities. And last time we had the book launch event, the hardest thing I ever did was hit end because nobody wanted to leave. But it really is usually an international audience because it's virtual, which is fun. And you can register again at our website, realizefoundation.org, at the events tab. And we hope we can see you there. So I'm going to take Brad and I out of the stream and put up a graphic of the book for you all. and we hope to see you at the event.